After another few months, only 3 in fact, which was a startling uptake in performance in terms of how quickly that Delius was adjusting to their rate of time flow, the speed of their interactions and movements. Delius had become fully capable of holding a normal conversation and sounding just like everyone else, as well as moving about and doing things at their rate of speed, and had all but mastered the art of interacting with things safely, able to open doors without breaking them, even interact with delicate electronic equipment, going so far as to even master the art of shaking hands without crushing the other person's, which took about a week of practice to achieve, done of course with a robotic stand-in, with a hand calibrated to measure the pressure that he was placing on it. But sure enough, after only a week, he was able to master it, giving a handshake that wouldn't crush the person he was shaking, after which they moved on to actual handshakes. And though his handshake felt a bit like an iron vice, it was still passable and didn't inflict them with any pain. The scientists studying Delius found his ability to adapt to their frame rate of speed and temporal movement astonishing. They had suspected when he first came that once introduced to their rate of time flow, his brain would simply adjust, re-antiquate itself to the current rate of time flow, and that after a short period of time he would simply exist within their time frame. But this was not the case. Delius's case was very different. Delius seems to still exist within his original frame rate of time. His core perspective of time is still that of many countless times slower than that of the regular flow of time throughout the universe. He was simply able to accelerate his ability to perceive the universe around him, and the speed at which he moves his body, produces sound waves with his voice, and the precision in which he does all of these things, including picking up sound waves from other things in order to hear. For a normal person, this is the equivalent of, say, trying to watch every movie you've ever seen simultaneously, while in fast forward, and still being able to intake all of the events, actions, and sounds that they're all making. Quite frankly, it simply didn't make sense how he was able to maintain his core mental temporal alignment and simply massively increase the details that he was able to perceive, absorbing more and more information at a faster and faster rate without changing that core flow of time rate with which he perceived the universe, down to the point where he could now interact with everyone else normally. An even more astonishing event transpired when Delius found himself accidentally pressing the fast forward button on a set of controls he was given for his television. He thought that he had simply accidentally slipped back into a slower frame rate of perceiving the world, not realizing that he had accidentally pressed a button that made the audio and video accelerate, and so did what he had been doing all along, adjusting himself to that faster flow of speed in which the events transpired. As such, they realized that Delius could adjust his perceptions to intake even more, things happening at a faster rate of speed than any person they've ever heard of could possibly intake. The only reason that they were even aware of it was that Asa came to check on Delius, finding that once she entered the room, Delius was rambling in a nonsensical state of speed and gibberish that she simply couldn't understand. He was speaking faster than she could perceive it, and thus couldn't understand it. Delius was a bit confused as she began to speak, and it sounded as if she were speaking in slow motion, in comparison to what he thought was the normal rate of speed, taking a moment to adjust himself back. This startling development was followed up by a series of tests to find out exactly how far Delius could push this, and they were all amazed by the results. First starting out with simple throwing weapons, taking him to a military firing range that was located on the base, where Delius had been staying. Finding that after being told what he was doing, and asked to adjust to objects being thrown, he quickly began to realize that he could adjust so that he could actually watch a weapon flying through the air, even speeding up his perception of it to the point where it almost looked as if it were standing still. And the more they amped it up, the more they found there was next to no difference, regardless of how fast the object were moving. After knives, they went to arrows. After arrows, bullets. After bullets, they went to energy projectile, and Delius was able to keep up with all of it. With some focus, he was actually able to track a beam of light in movement. With all of these tests aside, Delius actually wanted to begin with testing his combat abilities, and had asked for a sparring partner. They got one of the foremost hand-to-hand combat experts on the planet to come in. They did not tell him who exactly he would be sparring with, only that he was not to hold back at any point during the conflict. Delius and Asa were waiting in somewhat of a training room for this individual to arrive. So Delius, how are you feeling? I mean, we don't have to do this now. It seems like you're pressing forward pretty fast. The sooner I'm able to fully adapt, the better. Believe it or not, this whole experience is actually becoming very tedious. So I'd like to be able to get home before I have to go to bed. And I'm actually starting to get a bit peckish, and a big slice of saran feels like it would hit the spot. Right about now, they're probably cooking it. I can almost smell it in my head. So I'd kind of like to get this over and done with so I can be back for dinner. Oh, well, thank you. I'm glad my company is such a burden to you, Asa said, throwing him a cross glance. Oh, come on, Asa. You know it's not like that. It's just this frame rate of time or speed or whatever. It's annoying. I have to stay focused constantly. There's no relaxation. It's like being tense all the time. It's really inconvenient. I mean, it's not that I don't like you guys. It's just that I'd like to relax. And the sooner that we end this conflict and my home is safe, the sooner I can actually relax a bit. Go home, kick my feet up. I mean, I've never had to actually stay focused for this amount of time. Even hunting never required this much concentration. Plus, I'm actually a bit curious. Curious about what, Delius? Asa asked, being a bit curious about what Delius was referring to. Well, I was actually wondering what it would be like if I tried to use these accelerated perceptions back on my home world. I'm a little bit curious of how it would work. It might give me sort of an edge. I could definitely use it once I take on the journey for the awakening of Agara. Well, that is if there is an awakening. By the sounds of the news reports, while this enemy force on Pomis is trying to build a super weapon to kill Agara, a few of the other races have tried to put together some other ideas, and they've been getting a lot of backing, including one that Mikura suggested, which is some sort of massive sedative that'll keep Hagara asleep. Because Hagara sleeps for periods of time equatable to the creation of stars. Then once they put him to sleep, he'll be asleep long enough for everyone to have long since needed to move on to other worlds, and they can evacuate the primary worlds and let Hagara have his meal. Honestly, I'm not entirely against the concept. It would definitely allow my people to prosper as well, not having to pick up after 3 generations and rebuild everything, which is what we have to do, trust me.